Adrian could have been driving or Joe could have been driving, and I think Adrian lifted the keys and threw them to Joe. You drive this evening, like that type of thing. That's how,
how that man felt.
Yeah.
How that man felt that particular evening.
Yeah.
But you had a list, and this is in the book, it's great, a list of 12 names and suspects almost immediately.
Yeah, well, what happened is I brought Joe to my office and I said to Joe, look, he was the man that was there. He was able to tell me, and he went through everything, what happened and the whole lot. And I just asked him, what were their accents like? And, you have to keep in mind, Joe was 20 years working on the border. And Joe said to me, Pat, they weren't travellers, they weren't Dublin accents, they weren't Northern accents, they were local border accents. So that led me, that's my first starting point.
We were watching and listening to Pat Marry there on the Jerry Kelly show on LMFM radio. So let's have a look at what Pat Marry is saying here. He says he asked some of his detectives to draw up a list of names of people who may be involved in armed robberies or crimes such as this. And he said a list of 12 names came back to him, and Aaron Brady's was told in the list. This we cannot understand. It may very well be true, but it was stated during the course of Aaron's trial on numerous occasions that Aaron Brady was not a suspect in any other robbery or any other armed robbery that took place in and around the border or in and around the northeast. Now, that was stated by members of the Garda Síochána, senior detectives, during the course of Aaron's trial, that Aaron was not a suspect and Aaron was never questioned. So this line of introduction by Pat Marry is completely misleading. Aaron Brady has never, ever been questioned about any other armed robbery. During the course of all his detention and during the course of his incarceration, he has never been questioned about any other robbery in the northeast or along the border or whatever way Marry wants to describe it. So I think the most important part of this here is where Marry tells us, I brought Joe into the office, and he says quite clearly himself, he was the man that was there. He was able to tell me. He went through everything what happened, and then he moved on to the accents. Joe has 20 years experience walking along the border. So again, there is no getting away from this. There is no escaping that Pat Marry doesn't tell us that Joe told him that the raider was 6'1", 6'2", possibly 6'3", the raider who shot and murdered Detective Guard Adrian Donoghue. Now, he goes into great detail and nonsense about accents. There are thousands and thousands of people with border accents, and those thousands could be greatly reduced when you go to those that are male and are 6'1", 2 or 3. And yet Marry totally eliminates this from this podcast. And again, the likes of Jerry Kelly, who would be more than aware of the Justice for Aaron Brady campaign. Jerry Kelly has seen that poster. Jerry Kelly and those that do the background checks and those working in LMFM must be fully aware that this poster exists, that these videos exist. And to allow the senior detective to come on and totally obliterate a vital piece of on-site scene evidence. He was the man that was there. He was able to tell me. He went through everything what happened. Joe has 20 years experience working on the border. So there is no escaping what Pat Marry has omitted here. Absolutely no excuse whatsoever. It's gut-wrenching, it's sickening, and as for LMFM and Jerry Kelly, how can they in any way, shape or form take any credit or kudos for allowing a man like Marry, who is clearly disturbed, when we know that this is the facts? He's parading this book around in relation to our son Aaron, who's 5'6", nearly 5'7", who's incarcerated for crime that was committed by a man that's over 6'1" or 2. And LMFM and the mainstream media continuously allow this to happen. But we will continue now, and we'll see when Mary details people to go out and look for these people on the list. Let's have a look at listen to Mary and Kelly here in relation to looking for those on the list.
And I got 2 detective sergeants go into the office and draw up a list of people with border accents that would be involved in this type of thing or might do this type of thing. They came back with a list of 12, and Aaron Brady was number 3 on the list. And I didn't know much about Aaron Brady then, but I certainly do know a lot about him now. But he was on the list, and I then divided the teams that were there into teams of 2. And I gave them a target. Each one had a target of the 12. And one fella said to me, John Maroney, he's now a superintendent, and John said to me, I have him charged. I know he's staying, as part of his bail conditions, he's staying in a house in Carlingford.
Again, a short little clip of only 35, 40 seconds. But this clip is vitally, vitally important because, although it seems quite innocuous, this is the beginning of where Pat Murray and Sergeant John Maroney get it into their heads that Aaron had something to do with the murder and robbery at Lordship Credit Union. And this is where these 2 men have made a complete mess of the initial part of the investigation. This is the beginning of it, and this is the rabbit hole we have spoken about on numerous occasions, that these men ran down and made a complete farce of the initial part of the investigation. And we'll cover it in the next little clip. But Aaron was not bailed to the house in Carlingford that Pat Murray says. He even has the address wrong. We'll cover that at the last little bit of the clip. But it's important to see here the inaccuracies and the pathetic, what he says is great police work, the pathetic police work that takes place after this. So this is the initial part of Mary and Sergeant John Maroney going down the wrong rabbit hole. So we're going to move on, and we look at Mary telling us about Sergeant John Maroney and him stopping Aaron and Jimmy Flynn at the roundabout. Okay.
And I said, Gran, you take someone with you there and go up and do that. He went up, and we had a conference at something like 12:30 that night or something, and he came back and he said, he's not there. And I said, Gran, so he's a person that wasn't there, so, and he should have been there, he was in breach of his bail conditions. So look, he has to be traced down. But the next day, John was part of the search team and was searching the roadsides from the credit union up to Ballymascanlon roundabout, and he saw cars were coming, and he spotted Aaron Brady in a car and stopped it. And he was along with a guy called Jimmy Flynn. And fair dues to John Maroney, very good police work. He took both of them out and separated them and asked them where they were that day, yesterday. They said they were together, but they gave a different version of events. And that was strange. And John Maroney put that in a report, sent it to me. I read the report and I said, oh, this is interesting. This is a man that's not on the list, and now he's lying. And he lied about his phone number because we had his phone number anyway, and he had changed his last digit. So I said, there's a red flag here. We'll settle and look at this. So we looked at his phone records. It's either Adrian could have been driving.
Now, this clip of a minute holds a world of information. First of all, he said he told John Maroney to take another detective and another guard with him, go and look for Aaron in Carlingford, where he was bailed to. Now, Aaron was bailed, I should have mentioned last time, Aaron was bailed, and he was going to court in respect of damaging a number of cars in Dundalk, wrecking cars in Dundalk. And that court case was ongoing at this time. And Sergeant John Maroney was very much involved in that case. So, Mary tells us here that John Maroney went to Carlingford to where Aaron was bailed. LIES. It's totally incorrect. Myself and Caroline went into the barracks in Dundalk. This is long before the murder of Detective Guard Adrian Donoghue. And we spoke to Superintendent McGinn, and we got Aaron's bail conditions completely relaxed, and Aaron moved back down across the border, and his address was here at 79 New Road. So the fact that the Gardaí didn't know this or don't know this or tried to, they must have known it. The Superintendent McGinn was still in Dundalk at this time, as far as I can remember, and he would have known that he had spoken to myself and Caroline, and the bail conditions were relaxed, and Aaron Brady was not bailed to the house, as they say in Carlingford. It's not even in Carlingford, the address. But notwithstanding that, it's just such poor information, detail completely and totally incorrect. And remember, this is coming from a man who's telling us in books of making a detective and how to make money from the murder of a friend and colleague, how he was so intrinsic at looking at detail. And the whole premise of what he's saying here about himself and John Maroney is totally false. A complete load of nonsense. But notwithstanding that, so the bail conditions weren't breached. Most certainly were not. Aaron's bail conditions had been relaxed, and he was back down here, and he was addressed at 79 New Road, where we live here. So you're wrong, Mary. That's a lie. It's either inaccuracy, it's total incompetence, or you're telling lies to create an aura or a story. He wasn't at his bail address. So the next morning, and this is where the whole story takes a whole complete twist, and this is where this is the entry to the rabbit hole that Mary and Maroney went down. James Flynn and Aaron were driving up to the roundabout at Ballymac, within 2 miles of the murder and robbery scene at Lordship Credit Union. Now, very quickly, we've covered this in great detail. What is the chances of those who actually did commit this crime driving back in the next 6 hours after the murder and robbery? The murder and robbery is at 9 o'clock. At 2:30 or 3 a.m., Aaron and James Flynn drove through the cordon, spoke to the inner cordon, spoke to members from Garda Síochána, and went into James Flynn's house. They come out the next morning and driving into hundreds of Gardaí. If they had anything to do with the murder and robbery, there would have been nowhere near that Lordship Street, the Ballymac Street, that has been across the border here, without a shadow of a doubt. There could be no other option for anyone that was involved in the murder and robbery. Driving back down into the middle of it, not an option. Notwithstanding that, John Maroney stops them at the checkpoint, or stops them along the road. Jimmy and Aaron are taken out of the car, they're asked questions, and now it seems that they give different, this is where Aaron told lies about where he was. Again, if we look at the human aspect of it, they had all night to get their stories right if they were going to tell lies of some sort of a coordinated alibi. They had all night to prepare it, and Aaron most certainly would not have used his then girlfriend and her whole family that actually would have been drawn into it if it was some sort of a false alibi. But this whole thing of wonderful policing, very, very, very good policing by John Maroney. So let's have a look at the facts, Mr. Murray. Aaron Brady's number 3 on this, I'm going to call it a fictional list. He's not at his bail address, which is wrong anyway, you have that information wrong. And he stopped at a checkpoint, and the versions of the driver and Aaron, who's the passenger, their stories from the night before are different. Aaron is allegedly been in breach of his bail conditions, and John Maroney allows them to drive off. Now, what sort of policing is that? Is there any grounds to say that this was good policing? I believe Aaron could have been arrested for the breach of his bail conditions the previous evening. And if he was on the list, as was said, this would have been an excellent opportunity to immediately question someone who was on this suspect list that allegedly was drawn up in Fort Apache, Dundalk. So, again, you can see quite clearly how Mary is creating a narrative and a story that simply, at the very best, is pathetic. But we're going to move on. I will cover it here and this because one leads on to the other as such. Aaron then goes into Dundalk Garda Station, Fort Apache, 6 days later to give a statement to Mark Phillips and Jim McGovern. And the reason for that was because when Aaron's story was checked out, he was at his girlfriend's. Obviously, there was a big hurrah about that, and Aaron's LIES was discovered because Aaron was actually, when he went in the following week to meet McGovern and Phillips, he told them exactly where he was. He was in the yard here, as you can see, I put it up on the screen, at 155 Concession Road, where there was a diesel laundering plant in operation. And this is Aaron was involved in illegal activities, and this is the reason he didn't tell John Maroney when he was stopped at the roundabout. He wasn't going to say, I was loading cubes of waste diesel in a yard. That was never going to happen. But the crux of the matter is here. As we look at this yard, Detective Phillips has been told about it. Detective McGovern has been told about it. Pat Murray has been told about it. And Pat Murray, Mark Phillips, Jim McGovern, Beggy, Superintendent Beggy, the whole incident room in Dundalk, do not go and investigate the yard where Aaron Brady was at the time of the Modern robbery. They do not contact the PSNI to alert them that there's an illegal fuel laundering plant at operation on 155 Concession Road. So this shows clearly Pat Murray had already preordained the outcome of his investigation. And this we can prove because Pat Murray then took the stand during the course of Aaron's trial, and he was asked by Aaron's defence team, why? How can you explain when someone who's number 3 on the list, who you assumed his bail conditions was broken, had told you a lie, had told the Gardaí a lie, Sergeant John Maroney a lie, now Superintendent, by the way, and this suspect tells you where he was, and nobody from an Garda Síochána goes to check that yard out where there could be a plethora of evidence. There could be any amount of evidence pointing towards the crime that took place at Lordship Credit Union. The paraphernalia that was stolen, cars, guns cartridges, empty gun cartridge boxes, boots, clothes, balaclavas, all sorts, gloves, clothes with gunpowder residue on it. The list is endless, and yet, Mary, you sit and pontificate about being the top detective in Ireland. And this can't be explained. And as I said, this can be proven because Mary stood up in court during the course of Aaron's trial. He was questioned, as I've said, and he simply replied, I didn't need to go because I knew Aaron Brady was in the car park at Lordship Credit Union. Now, how this man can sit and face the public is beyond belief. Now, we have to remember, this isn't after months of investigation, weeks of investigation. This is 6 days later. He gets this information. So, by Saturday, the 5th of, or a little more than a week later, Saturday the 5th of February, Pat Murray has made the decision that Aaron Brady is guilty of the Modern robbery at Lordship Credit Union. It is pathetic. It is unprofessional. It is scary. The man is deranged. The man is covering his arse because of the absolute farce he has made of the investigation. And that little clip of 2.5 minutes is vitally important. It gives us great insight into the man's mental capacity and his belief that he believes something, therefore it is true. And this is seen quite clearly throughout his book and throughout the podcast he done, Making the Detective. And it is seen quite clearly when he is talking here to Jerry Kelly. And again, Jerry Kelly, a very simple question. He could have asked Mary, where did Aaron Brady say he was at the time of the Morton robbery? But that is not broached now in any of these podcasts or whatever, because it's not suitable and Mary can't explain himself or give any credence to the investigation incident room at Fort Apache, Dundalk. Now, we will continue to look at this podcast and we will critique, because some of the things Mary says in this podcast with LMFM is absolutely disgusting. He's making stuff up and facts up as he goes along. And we will be covering that over the next few days. So hopefully that gives you some idea into the mindset of this man. And it is the reason why we released the initial videos, the caveat to show quite clearly the man is unstable. His ego is, as in his mind, is beyond reproach. But he must be stopped. Thank you, and we'll see you very shortly at the next look at Pat Mary's podcast with Jerry Kelly on LMFM. Thank you.